All right, so I'm recording this video to show you the check patterns exercise. This is something by Tom Hannum. He's an instructor of one of the DCI courses, can't remember which one off the top of my head, but he's got his own signature stick and everything. So this is a exercise that has been used by drumlines forever, ever since it was written in the 80s. But there's the main purpose of this exercise is not so much about building your chops or building like dexterity in your hands, but rather about building your focus and your accuracy in playing. So the first thing I want you to think about is 4/16 notes set up like this. We're going to imagine this is one beat, and each of these dark lines is a 16th note. You'll notice there's dotted lines around each one. That's because in each of these 16th notes, there's actually a range that you can end up playing in and still play the 16th note correctly, if that makes sense. You can play a little bit behind each 16th note, or you can play a little bit in front of each 16th note, a little bit ahead. So you can also think of it like bullseyes, right? On each of these bullseyes, you can hit the target and still be considered as hitting the target, but it's not perfectly accurate because you didn't hit the bullseye, right? You can hit one of the outer rings and still hit the bullseye. It's the same way when you're playing a rhythm. You can hit each of the ranges for the rhythm, or you could aim for the bullseye every single time. And the goal of this exercise is learn how to hit the bullseye every time. Now what that looks like in practical terms is that when you're playing, you play on top of the metronome every single time that you play. Instead of being able, if you can hear the metronome, that means you're not hitting the bullseye, right? If that makes sense. If you're playing a little bit ahead of the metronome, or if you're playing a little bit behind the metronome, that means that you're not playing perfectly accurate, right? Which it takes practice to do this. Now, check patterns is a great exercise for this because it's a relatively simple exercise, and it's that way for a reason, so you can focus on other things. It teaches you fundamental 16th note combinations. So, I've got my metronome here. It's just a simple metronome. It does all the subdivisions that you'll ever need, and you really don't need to have a Dr. Beat in order to learn how to play with a metronome, right? It's a really nice thing to have, but really all you need is a simple metronome that does subdivisions. Okay, so I'm gonna set this to 16th note subdivision, and I'm gonna set the tempo to 80, right? So it sounds like this. Okay, so the check patterns exercise, which you should have, it starts with the main pattern at the top, which is labeled check. And I'm going to play that for you real quick. Okay, that's the basic check pattern. And what each of the variations below is a different combination of 16th notes that replaces the groups of 4/16 notes in that original check pattern. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just play the original check pattern, and then I'm just going to go straight down and play all of the variations. Okay, so I'm going to be trying to play perfectly accurate the way I described, like hitting the bullseye. I'm going to do my best, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to pull it off. The idea is that you don't hear the metronome. The idea is that you're playing so accurately that the striking of the stick on the head of the drum is exactly the same as the attack of the metronome sound. Okay, so I'm going to start at the top, and I'm just going to go straight down. I'm going to hope I play it all correctly, right? But it's just a check pattern and all the various 16th note combinations. Here it goes. So that's all the variations of check patterns. I don't know how successfully I was able to cover up the metronome, but the idea is that if you're able to play that accurately to cover up the metronome, that means you're truly playing in time. It's important that when you're playing this exercise that you follow the stickings strictly, that you don't change the stickings at all. The idea is, as a line, you should be playing the exact same thing all the way across the board. So follow the stickings that are on the page that you have. And it shows you a conceptualization of how to consider the stickings. So if you look at number 3, for example, that's the one that has 1E, a 2, and 1E, a 2, and 1E, a 2E, a 3E, a 4, and, or whatever the count is, 1E, a 2, and. You'll notice that you have the 2 lefts in a row on the E and the 1E, a 2. 1E, a 2. And for the snares, that's the same sticking that we used in Birdland towards the end. And that's partially why I had you do that sticking, is because it shows up in this exercise, and that's a standard way to approach that sticking. So this is a great exercise to give you tools to master these 16th note rhythms and to learn how to play them very, very accurately. So please take the time to practice these variations. Don't try to go through the whole thing all at once. Take it one variation at a time and go back to the check pattern every time. So for example, if you're starting with number 1, you would play the check pattern, etc. And then you'd play variation 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2. And then you'd finish that, then you go back to the check pattern. And then you go back to 1, and then check, 1, and check, right? And so on for each of those variations until you've mastered it and you've got it in your hands and you feel comfortable playing. So, if you have any questions, you can let me know. Otherwise, we will work on this in rehearsals, and I look forward to seeing what this offers to you.